Hey guys, welcome back. It's Santos and Vaughn, and today we have the pleasure and the honor of talking to a good friend. Jay, we know each other, I want to say about 11, 12 years now.
Yeah, that's right. I was in my early 20s.
That
Now
is
I'm 34. 35.
that is insane. Not that you're 35, but it's insane that
Right.
we've known each other that long, and I've
Yep.
seen you progress. But I've always followed you because even from when I first met you, I was always impressed with how you thought. Tell us, Jay, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate that, Santos. So I work in the financial services space. Basically, to kind of wrap up what I do in a nutshell, we, sit down with people and we figure out where they are financially speaking. We figure out where they want to be financially speaking, and then we put together a plan to get them there as efficiently as possible. So essentially we look on, for ways to help people save on taxes, help people save on insurance costs, and basically free up money so that they can better save for retirement, maybe for building a business or putting their kids through college or whatever they want to save for. Right. We essentially figure out ways to free up money for that. And then essentially the long-term plan is to get them financially independent, where they have enough money where they no longer need to work for their money. They have enough money where they can essentially live free of their job. They can work if they want to, basically. They don't have to go to work. So that's ultimately what we do. But what got me into this space, and as you said, we've known each other for a long time. We originally met, doing working in direct sales. And this was in my early 20s, where I just didn't really have the mindset of, hey, go to school, get a 9 to 5, 30 and out type thing. I just was never a fan of that. And that's what I was taught. That was my path, what I thought was supposed to be my path. But I really fought hard against that. So in my early 20s, I did a multiple different jobs. I ended up finally getting a job working in as a dock worker for a freight company. Essentially, I drove forklifts and loaded unloaded trucks. And but I just was terrible at that job, just not good at it at all. So I ended up getting fired. And after I got fired, I didn't know what I was going to do. So that's when actually Santos and I met, and I started doing direct sales. And to be honest, I wasn't extremely successful in the venture that Santos and I were on. I wasn't successful. I don't know if Santos was. He's always been a successful guy, but that led me into sales, into regular corporate sales. So I started doing that. Now the thing is, early on in my I was 18, 19 years old, and I read the book Money Makeover from Dave Ramsey. That I'm sure you guys have heard of it.
Yep.
And it made me kind of reprogram my brain on the way money works. I always used to think you get money to spend it. I never kind of realized that you can have complete control over your money. And it wasn't until I read that book and went to Dave Ramsey's seminar that I realized you can have control. So I always liked the concept, but unfortunately it took me 10 years to kind of begin implementing it. Or my bachelor's in business, started working for Sears as a financial analyst. Then I transitioned into Lockheed Martin. I worked there as a financial analyst, managing multi-millions of dollars in contracts and whatnot. But still, though, I realized that I'm still captive to the trap of that 9 to 5. You know what I mean? And that 9 to 5, you're still exchanging your time for money. And I've never been a fan. So even though I've never liked it, it's still been what I've always kind of been doing, right? Not till about 3 years ago, where I came across Landmark Financial Group and Primerica Financial Services, where it gives me the option and the ability to work as a financial advisor on a part-time basis. I don't have to quit my job to do that. And, again, with my financial background, my 11 plus years of experience, I figured it'd be pretty seamless transition. And to be honest, it has been. So, my team and I, we've been seeing pretty major success in that space. We've been growing extremely fast. And ultimately, that's what I do now, right? I help people essentially just try to get financially free so that they can escape that 9 to 5 trap. If they want to. They don't have to, but if they want to, at least the flexibility is there. That's kind of what my background is.
No, that was awesome. And you helped enlighten both Vaughn and I because although I knew what you were doing and I watched all of your social media content, I'm constantly following it. I've shared it just because I find that you bring a lot of value to the table to specifically the common people that, like you said, we may not know that there's another way out or any projects that you're currently working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to what I mentioned, I kind of gave you a brief level overview, a high level overview of what I do, right? We figure out where somebody is, where they want to be, and get them there as quickly as possible. So to get in a little bit more detail, Essentially, when I sit down with somebody, the first thing that we do is educate the person on why we're even having a conversation. Why does it matter? Most people don't even understand why they should have savings. They know they should invest. They know they should have insurance. They know they should have an emergency fund, but really it doesn't like quite click as to why exactly. So we'll have that conversation. Hey, what exactly are you trying to accomplish? What is your life trying to, what are you trying to accomplish in your life? Where do you see your life in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? And once we kind of gather that information and understand, hey, I want to, reach this level in my life, financially speaking, that's when we start talking about it. We essentially look at people's tax refunds, for example. Most people in today's society will receive a tax refund of somewhere between $3,000 to $5,000, especially if you have kids. Some people that have a lot of kids will receive refunds of up to $10,000 or more. And what do most people do with these refunds, in your opinion?
Most people, they've even spent it before they even got it, right? There's some kind of a bill that they want to pay off, or, they're going to invest it in something in their home. Maybe they're going to put it into their car or whatever. But the vast majority of people, in my opinion, usually have it spent before they've even received the check.
Exactly. Yeah, I strongly agree. Most people will go and buy a TV. Most people will go and buy, random stuff for their house. They'll go and buy it, they'll put it as a down payment for a new car, whatever. But then what a lot of people don't realize, specifically related to taxes, is you're essentially giving the government an interest-free loan. So you're letting them borrow that money. They're paying it back to you at the end of the year because you overpaid in taxes. And then you decided, as a client or consumer, to go and blow it on a TV. We educate the person on what exactly they're doing, and we find a way to reallocate that money so that they can get it each month and put it to a purpose to help them drive their financial goals and kind of to redirect them there, help them save a little bit of money. And then, like I said, getting people out of debt. Obviously, people know they should be debt free, but they don't really live that debt free life, right? So we help people get out of debt 10 years sooner than usually they're on track to do. We have systems that help us accomplish that. So the 3 types of bank accounts that you should have, the various investment strategies based on your age, because that's going to be different for a 20-year-old compared to a 50-year-old. So ultimately, we have systems and strategies that we use for all types of clients.
Hey, would you say that there are typically 2 to 3 barriers to being, financially stable that are traditionally something you have to debunk on a regular basis?
Gary V, I'm a huge fan of his, and he preaches a concept of you have more time than you think. And I genuinely believe that, right? Like, we're not as old as we think. In other words, I think the point that he's trying to make is that we have enough time to be able to completely change our lives and have it go in a totally different trajectory. Heard, understood, and agreed. But I think a lot of people kind of take that concept to the max. In other words, I'll get to it eventually, or, oh, I have plenty of time, right? And next thing you know, they're 60 years old and they're like, God, I'm not going to be able to work in the next 5 years and I have no money, and right. Social Security is going to be $1,000 a month. So that right there is one of the biggest ones that I have to kind of to help somebody understand. And usually it's people between the ages of 19, early 20s through 30s, around their mid 30s, that they're just like focused on, hey, I want to just enjoy my life, enjoy my money, right? It's not until they have kids and so they have a house and so they have serious obligations that they realize, man, maybe I shouldn't be blowing my money, spending $1,000 at a club on a weekend or something. Like that's So that's usually one of the biggest issues that we have to fight with. And the other thing that we have to kind of work through is for older folks, the older folks that did take the advice, right? They did save up their entire lives. They've been working faithfully at a company for 40 years. And now it's time to start pooling money, and they still believe they don't have enough to retire. So it's like, listen, Mr. and Mrs., you have enough. You've done your part. Now it's time for you to go enjoy your money. You don't need to continue working till you die. And I know it's like 2 sides of the spectrum, but those are usually kind of where we have to deal with the most. Usually in the in-between, it's just kind of, hey, listen, you should do this. Let's set it. Forget about it. We'll talk in 10 years type thing, right? And usually people understand that, but it's usually in the early stages and in the late stages that we have to really work hard when talking to people.
Here's what I've noticed, and here's what I like about your messaging. You've done a great job of demystifying really what it is to be financially sound, and you've done a good job of simplifying it. I believe that most people are afraid of the subject just because they don't know, and what they don't know, they fear. right? So they rather just kind of let's keep walking past that, that gorilla that's sitting in the middle of my living room, right? That's just, you know, rattling the cage, trying to break free. And maybe if I just walk past it and not look that way and ignore it, it won't break out, right? And I think that people kind of do that, especially with their finances, right? Because they don't understand it, they're confused, they think that it's overly complicated, and they're just afraid to open up and say, hey, this is where I'm at financially, right? What I like about your messaging and appreciate about your messaging is that you simplify it. You tell people no matter where you're at, you can still start, right? You're not too late. Too late is once you've passed away and you're no longer here, right? Then there's nothing that can be done about it. But in the meantime, there's still time. You can still do things. Of course, don't keep putting it off. Get it taken care of, but start educating yourself. What kind of things do you do in addition to what you've got on social media? How would you educate some of our listeners who perhaps know nothing about financial planning and would want to like take that first step, just kind of dip their toe in the water?
Dave Ramsey's Money Makeover. He has the baby steps, the 7 baby steps. And, Dave, if you're listening to this, I'm a fan. If I had to speak to somebody that's completely new, that knows nothing about finances, hey, go ahead and get that book and read it. Because it's going to give you a good idea of what it is to budget. It's going to give you a good idea. It's going to at least change your mindset when it comes to money. And I think it's a great starting point. And then they sit with somebody like me, now that they at least have a little bit of better information, and then at that point, we start drilling down into these various concepts of how exactly they can move forward in their financial life. But I think that's a good strategy, or that's a good kind of place to start. Of course, shameless plug, follow me on social media. It's at Jay Gonzalez 115. So you'll be able to get a lot of content there when it comes to finances. I created a video. It's about a 40-minute video. And it's the 3 steps to how to build your wealth. And it's 3 basic concepts on how you can actually start, making changes in your life to accomplish that financial freedom. And, you can get that via my Instagram, or you can go to my website and you can get that there. It's one of the first things that you'll see once you go on. So it's that could be a good starting point as well. My website is jgfinancialpro.com if you want to check it out.
We want people to be able to access you and reach out to you. And I love that you are offering 3 basic concepts, because I think that's one of the scariest things about finances. It's just like, so I'm a nurse. I can use medical terminology and talk to you about, cancer or, something genetic, and you would be very confused. But if I explain it to you in verbiage that you understand, then you feel relieved, and you're educated, and you understand you can make good choices in your health. Same with your finances. And I know that as a young person, I was afraid of finances because people would speak to me in financial jargon, and I had no idea what it meant, exempt, non-exempt, or I can't even think of the, vested, not vested. I was like, what is that all that? I don't understand what that means. And why is one better than the other? Or, why is this insurance, going to be better for me than this insurance? I was afraid to do it all because I didn't know if you were just trying to take my money. So I like that you broke it down to 3 basic concepts. And would you say that in these concepts, people will be able to understand what you're saying to them and not have to have a degree in finance?
Yeah. Finance is way less complicated than people make it out to be. Throughout the entire time that I was in school, getting my education, throughout the entire time that I've been working in corporate environments, not once have I ever had to really implement a significant amount of data analytics, because I spent a lot of time getting professionally, formally educated. And you can literally change your life from becoming essentially financially, struggling, to making yourself a millionaire with the most simple things in the world. Even though I might know a lot, it's not what's necessary to actually reach your financial goals.
I love that you're saying it's not complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated. There are different ways to do it, and that part can be a lot of variables into different ways to do it. But there are simple investments that you make, you put it in, it grows, and and you benefit from it.
All we basically teach and preach is, the general concepts of, hey, listen, you should have a savings account, you should have an emergency account, you should have an emergency fund, you should have a short-term savings account. You should probably have a Roth IRA, you should probably have a 401k, those type of general things, super basic and things that people just know, but I guess they just need somebody to tell them.
What would you say to the person who says, hey, I know I need to have an emergency fund, I know I need to have life insurance, but I only earn enough to pay for my food and bills now? What would you say to them?
Then you need to figure out a way to make more money, honestly. And it's their responsibility to figure out a way to make more money. Now, if I'm talking to a single person that nobody really relies on them, then okay, if you're fine, then if you don't really care, then fine. Talk to me when you do have enough money, I guess, But for people that have a family, that have kids, that have a spouse, and they're struggling to make, ends meet, financially speaking, and all they do is, and I don't mean to sound rude, but all they do is kind of complain about where they're at, then it's like, hey, your job is to help your family move forward and grow, right? So you should take it upon yourself to find a different way to earn additional income, whether that's getting a second job, whether that's starting a side hustle, starting your own business, whatever, man. You got to figure it out, right? Because your family relies on you. And at this point, to be honest, I'm speaking to the men, right? Your family relies on you to grow, and they rely on you to succeed. And, it's your job. So, I don't know if you all believe in the Bible, if we're biblically principled here, right? But the biblical principles state that it's the man's job to do that. And I genuinely believe that. And for me, that is what makes me hungry every single day. You know what I mean? Like, we keep pursuing because it's my job.
We could stop right there as far as I'm concerned. This is my favorite part of the entire podcast because I love what you said. You said you need to make more money. And that is the thing. We cannot, I feel like sometimes we live in a good enough generation where, so Santos will tell you, we've had conversations like this before, where people only change for two reasons. Either it hurts enough that it makes them change, or they've learned enough that it makes sense to them to change. If everything is good enough, if it doesn't hurt and for some reason it makes sense to them to just stay status quo as good enough, there is no growth, there is no change. So you've got to either get educated or get uncomfortable.
Yep. And you said, Jay, something that kind of resonated with me, right? It's your responsibility to either go out there and find a way to make more money. Like you said, come up with a side hustle, start your own business, maybe take on a second job, right? Because here's the thing, it's going to be uncomfortable to do that, but it's going to be a lot more uncomfortable to reach retirement age and at that age try to start to figure out how to make more money because you've run out of money, right? So that's one way. But there's also, and what I have found, and of course I'm not as educated or as well versed as you are, Jay, because you're in this space, but also it's not always about what you bring in. Sometimes it's about what you avoid leaving your house or leaving your checking account, right? What are you overspending on? What is not a necessity that then you can take that money and put it into something else that's going to make you more money or that's going to help you start growing your finances. So it really all does boil down to becoming educated. Hence the reason why we're having this conversation in the first place. When I thought about who can help our audience become better educated on planning for the future and their finances, immediately I thought of you. So do me a favor, Jay. Give us another humble brag and plug some of the things that you have going on. More importantly, if our audience wants to reach out to you, what are the best ways to do so? And we'll make sure that we have them on screen, but tell us what are the best ways for them to reach out to you.
Absolutely. So the best way to follow me and see kind of what I do and what I'm up to consistently is on my Instagram and on my Facebook. Both of them are Jay.Gonzalez, simple enough. And you could also visit my website, which is JG Financial Pro, all one word, .com, jgfinancialpro.com. There I have multiple different pages where you can get to know who I am exactly. We have a lot of things that we offer. It's completely free that'll help you with your finances. And of course, you know, you have the route if you desire to talk to a professional, kind of at least understand where you are today and see what recommendations a professional would make. You could always reach out to me as well via the website, and we can always talk about it. One of the things I will say is that there's never any obligation. You know, most advisors will charge somewhere between $1,000 to $3,000 to do a written financial plan for you. In our firm, our philosophy is that we want to help as many people as we can become financially free and independent. So, you know, we believe that a $0 fee is appropriate, right? At least to sit down and have a written plan. So just so you know, right, it's not going to cost you necessarily a lot, any money up front. In addition, I will say, you know, I don't know if you all know this, but in today's society, in the United States today, there's only around 330,000 financial advisors, you know? And now why do I bring that up? Because we just talked about making more money. And a lot of times when people think about making more money, they tend to turn to what's one of the most common ones? Real estate.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right? I'm going to go sell houses. But
Right.
today, there's more real estate agents than there are houses for sale in the United States. Okay. Yep. So the reason I bring this up is because there's only about 300,000 financial advisors today, but actually a survey just released by Intuit, this was done in January of this year, says that 80% of Gen Z and millennials want to learn more about finances. They want a better capacity when it comes to financial education. But there's only 300,000 financial advisors, and most of them are above 50, which means that they're going to be retiring in the next 10 years. So my point is there's a huge gap that needs to be filled with people like myself that provide financial education. And my firm, we're always looking to grow. We're always looking to license new agents. We have a very comprehensive training program, and it's a very, very almost little to zero, you know, barrier to entry. So if that's something you wanted to do as well, if you're looking for a way to make more money, that's something that we should probably have a conversation about as well. So definitely wanted to kind of put that out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
Thank you so much. So let me just recap. You offer a 3-step process to just get started and become educated, and it doesn't cost anyone anything. They can just simply go on your website and pull that information, and at least they've got 3 basic steps where they can start. I also heard you say that your firm believes in educating people from the onset and that there should not be a fee attached to that initial plan and that initial conversation to kind of, you know, thwart off any fears that people may have that it's going to cost me too much money. Listen, to get started, you're saying it's free. That's amazing. And in addition to that, if you speak or if there's someone out there who's looking for a way of, hey, I realize now that it's my responsibility. Jay said it's my responsibility to take care of my family and I need to make an extra income. This is a great way to get started, not only learning for yourself, but also becoming educated so that hopefully in the future, then you can pay it forward, pour into others by educating them financially, and you have a way of offering that as well. So I mean, guys, this is the full package, right?
Right.
You've got someone who's young, who's hungry, who's interested in educating, and I'm gonna end off our conversation today. And Jay, we didn't rehearse this, but I'd like to know, what is it that drives you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my why is pretty deep, and we can go on a whole hour-long conversation about that. But as far as my why, you know, this is the typical story for most people. You know, we didn't grow up poor, but we definitely didn't grow up having whatever we wanted. And once I kind of understood the concepts of finance and understood the control that you can really have over it, I wanted the freedom that comes with being, you know, financially educated, financially literate, right? Because if you understand the concepts when it comes to money and when it comes to finance and building business, you can do whatever you want. When I sit with a client and I see, it's like, hey, you just don't know what you don't know. You just don't understand because it's never happened to you. You just don't understand because you haven't seen it. Like, trust me, you need to get this in order because your future depends on it. Because there's only a couple things that are guaranteed in life. One, that's you're going to get older. There's no question about that. And eventually you're going to pass. And if you don't prepare for both of those things, I mean, like, really, what are you doing, right? So that's basically the kind of things that as to why I care so much, you know, whether I was getting paid or not. It's people need to know this information.
Sure. Sure.
Perfect. Perfect.
I think that if you had a mic in front of you, you could just drop it right now. That's how good you made me feel, right? Because ultimately, this is something that I don't care who you are, we're all going to have to face at some point or another. So it now becomes a question of how do you want to face it? Do you want to face it without a plan, chaotic, messy, struggle, difficult, equals a lot of pain? Or do you want to face this educated with a plan where now you're going to ease into retirement or you're going to ease into it? And like you said, you don't have to settle for something less because you prepared for it and you planned ahead. So thank you so much, Jay. I know you're a busy man, and I really appreciate the time that you had or that you spent with us educating our viewers that this doesn't have to be difficult. This doesn't have to be complicated. And you know what? It's much better to put it out there and discuss it with someone who can educate you, like Jay can, than to reach an age where now it's too late and you've got to deal with the consequences of procrastination. So thank you so much, Jay. Appreciate you. Vaughn, is there any final words that you want to share with our listeners today?
Yeah, I just want, you mentioned if it's too late. Jay, it's never too late, right? I mean, we can always improve a little bit. Yes, we may not live our dream life, but it's never too late to talk to somebody like you. Would you agree?
100% agreed, right? It's obviously the best day to start is yesterday, but that applies to every single one of us. Because if I would have started when I was 18, even though and it's worse, because if I knew the information at 18, but it took me 10 years to implement it. So, the best day to start is yesterday, regardless of whether you're 18 or 60. There's always an opportunity to improve, and there's always some room to kind of move up, right? So definitely agree.
Yeah, and you can feel good if you move forward, if you put the work in. That Santos said it's not complicated, but it does take energy, it does take time, it does take effort, and it does take an understanding. So I hope that a lot of people reach out to you, take advantage of your information, and start thinking about this and get proactive today.
Thank you so much, Jay.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks.